Hey, y'all. This is Shantae McLaughlin. And tonight we're going to be discussing part two of the Matthew Baker Jr. case. We have Kaylin Womack and Angie Lanier, Matthew's mom, joining us. So we're going to just get right in. Did you ladies have anything to say before we change the screen out? All right. Okay. So Matthew Baker Jr. has been sitting in Henry County's jail for 6 years now. Kaylin is here from Honeysuckle Magazine. She's the first person that actually did justice in covering his story. She's based out of New Jersey. This is a Henry County, Georgia case, which means no one has been doing justice for this young man here in Georgia. That includes the NAACP, that includes the SELU, that includes all of these organizations, attorneys who are here in this state who claim that they represent Black lives. So, Kaylin, would you mind continuing your story?
Sure. So last week, I believe we left off where we were kind of going through the steps of the case, what happened the night of the incident, and we left off specifically when Matthew saw Jacob Koski open fire on the people who were inside of the bonfire party inside of the house. And he told the detective, per the interrogation tape that was played in court, that he was scared for his life. And Jacob turned to him after he was done opening fire on the victims and told him that if he said anything, he would shoot him too. So, per this presentation, thank you again for taking some excerpts out of the article. It's kind of still a recap of what we spoke about last time. So I'll just skip to Koski went up to the front door. He realized that the door was locked. And he told me via JPay message that as soon as he realized the door was locked, something just went off in his head. We spoke last week about how he was schizophrenic and has been struggling with mental illness since a child. So he said as soon as he realized the door was locked, for some reason, something happened in his head where he just snapped. And then the first victim, Destiny Ollinger, unfortunately was in front of the door when he opened it, and she got shot first. Following that, Koski walked inside the house, and Matthew saw him walk inside the house. He didn't see exactly who he was shooting, where he was shooting, but he just heard the shots. He basically described the moment as being frozen, paralyzed with fear and shock, standing in front of the house. Once Koski was done shooting, he looked around the house, went back outside, and he looked at Matthew and said, "I'll shoot you if you say anything." And then Matthew went on to say, per the interrogation, that he was scared for his life. And he basically felt like in that moment, he might as well have been one of the other victims in the house if he didn't comply with what Jacob said in the moment. Following that, Baker and Koski walked down the driveway back to the car. The other three people who were in the car heard the shots. They were asking them what was going on. Matthew was just too shocked to even say anything, and he was too scared to say anything because he got in the car with Koski. So Koski just told the two girls in the front, Kayla Head and Brooke Knight, just drive the car. So they were driving. He was giving them instructions. They ended up dropping him off near the Newton County line. And he allegedly said what happened after he got out of the car and told them what happened. Following that, he just kind of went off roaming. The rest of the people in the car, including Matthew, went back to Matthew's house. And that's where everything kind of picks up the next morning when the police go and track the car down to Matthew's house to detain everyone. Also, per the investigation, I thought it was interesting that while Matthew was recounting exactly what was going on, you could obviously hear in his voice that he was traumatized by reliving this experience. He had no prior experience with gun violence or gang violence or anything like that. So to just see someone that he barely knows kill someone right in front of his face was just crazy to him. and you can hear him crying and stumbling over his words and sniffling in the audio. And the detective seemed to sympathize with him. He asked him, have you ever just seen someone like get shot in front of you and you don't know what to do about it? And the detective sympathized with him and said, yeah, I know. It's really traumatizing. It can be really shocking. So I thought that was important to note, because it almost seemed like, he was trying to make him comfortable to speak. And he seemed like he was understanding where he was coming from and, creating a safe space for him to tell him all of this information and relive these traumatic experiences in his head, just to turn around and throw the entire thing on him. So after the interview, the detective handed Matthew a clipboard to write down basically everything that he just told him. And he left the room, he closed the door, and he locked the door behind him, which is a pretty big signal that you consider that person in the room to be detained. Matthew didn't know that he was being detained. He didn't know that he was being arrested or accused of anything. He didn't know that he was locked in the room. So after 2 hours of writing, he, wraps everything up, and then he goes to the door. Door's locked. The door doesn't open again, maybe for another hour, when he asks an officer if he could be escorted to the bathroom, goes to the bathroom, is escorted back into the room, locked inside again. It's not until nearly 9 hours later that an officer comes back into the room, opens the door, and that officer was there to arrest him. And they proceeded to zip tie his ankles, handcuff him behind his back, and said, Matthew Baker, you're arrested for murder. And just listening to the shock in his voice when he responded to the officer, just like, what? Like, what do you mean I'm being arrested for murder? Was just heartbreaking. So after that, now we're here 6 years later, and he's still in jail without a trial yet.
Thank you. Angie, I know you're having a tough time with this one. I actually talked to Matthew today. This person here is Jacob Koski, and I'm not sure if anyone can read these JPEGs, but his messages are July 1st, 2021. No, we're going to go back a little. June 22nd, 2021, 10:49 a.m. I'm sorry the Henry County haters are hating on you. I don't know. I know how it is. It sucks because you're just trying to do the right thing. You will be profit from your good deeds. False imprisonment is just as bad as murder. And the Henry County system is trying to kill an innocent person. God knows best. Then we have July 1st, 8:27. I think I have a duplicate in here, so I'll have to look and see what the other message was. But Matthew didn't have a phone. I called Brooke Knight to come pick me up, but Matt was just with her at the time. And the guns that were used were stolen from the house. Matt never touched the gun. I stole them from on top of the fridge. And how is my testimony contradicting? That's not true. They just want another conviction so Darius Patillo can get reelected. How can you convict an innocent man when the real person who did the crime is telling you he's innocent? I have nothing to lose or gain from Baker getting released or in prison. I just want to do the right thing. Matthew Baker is innocent. I don't know why people don't believe the truth. My case was spur of the moment and was not planned whatsoever. He did nothing wrong. I don't see how a jury can convict him. Straight up, he needs to get his case moved from the corrupt court ASAP. Thanks. July 1st, about, 6 minutes later. I never said Matthew gave me the guns. That's a lie. And I never called Matthew. He didn't have a phone. I called Brooke Knight to come pick me up because me and my sis were in danger. Whew. That's a heavy one, y'all.
I'm going to add something to that.
Okay.
If anybody goes back to now this right here that you just read, these are just from June. But if they go back 5 years ago, 5.5 years ago, and they pull up Channel 2 here for Georgia, 11 Alive, Fox 5, whatever, if they pull up the part where Cosby was at his preliminary hearing, and they showed the news media at the time was inside the courtroom. Detective LaCroix was up there, and he was stating his conversation with Cosby during the preliminary hearing. He said he stood there and lied twice. He lied in court at Cosby's preliminary hearing, and he lied in court at Matthew's court, this last court hearing. He told the judge and all that on national TV that Matthew was his accomplice, and Cosby had an outburst right there in court. They had to shut the courtroom down, get the news media out of there because the outburst was so crazy or whatever, and to get him to calm down. And you can hear him on national TV blurted out, "Oh, I never said that." Now, that boy wasn't on no type of medicine then, and he was not on no type of medicine now or if he is on medicine, I don't know, because I don't know anything about him. I never met him personally myself. But I don't know if they got him on his medicine there or what, but when he went to that preliminary hearing, I know that was only within like a couple of days after all this happened. So I know he wasn't on any kind of medicine. They didn't care about him.
Yeah, I don't know Jacob Koski. I don't know any of his people either. But what I will say about the medication and the judicial system is, one, people don't realize that the medication actually belongs to the jail. So they administer it how they administer it. If you're lucky, they'll send in a psychiatrist or a therapist or someone who can prescribe, but usually they don't. And prison, from what I'm to understand, has a better medical they usually have better medical practices. I can't even get my words. I spoke with Matthew today and around 5:00, and I'm at a loss for words because as a mental health advocate, like in looking this young man in his eyes, I don't know how it would feel if I were you, Angie, with that being my son, because I could see the trauma. Like the trauma is noticeable. His eyes move rapidly. He's been on solitary confinement for the last 2 months due to COVID. Although with COVID, when they come in, they're on 15-day quarantine before they move them to the regular units. And he's been on confinement or 23-4, which means 23 out of 24 hours you're in your cell. He has a cellmate, and he's known him for 9 months, and he was cellmates with him before. He said he's eating, the food's decent. The showers have black mold. He gave me permission to ask him anything that I wanted to. We started the conversation with me letting him know that you love him, Angie, and that you had a dental appointment today. And so that's how we started off the conversation. And he said the only real question that I asked him about the case was, why do you think they're doing this to you? And he said a couple of things, but at the root of everything was he feels that they want they're not satisfied with how things are, and they don't feel that justice has been served. So they're looking for, and I'm not quoting his words, but basically they're looking for, they're not satisfied and they want justice, and they think that justice is him going to prison. And the prosecutor actually said something to the effect of, we don't have anything on you, but we know you were involved. And so I haven't had I've reached out to a couple of lawyers that I know. I made a couple of phone calls, and we shall see. if one will be interested in taking the case. Nothing to get your hopes up, because I didn't talk to anyone. I talked to some voicemails today. And we want justice.
It's okay, because the more I keep talking, the more I keep doing podcasts, the more we keep sharing, the more people sign a petition, the more people hear Matthew Baker Jr. God is going to place somebody in the path that we need to represent him the way that he's represented. His attorneys don't really seem to be wanting to fight for him the way that they should be fighting for him. I shouldn't be questioning how you are, what you're doing to save my son's life. I shouldn't be questioning that. And there shouldn't be no, I was last told that they don't put all their cards on the table. Okay, well, you want to put all your cards on the table. For me, I'm his mom. I gave birth to him. I'm the one that struggles every day, knowing that he is innocent. The one that's been proclaiming that he's innocent every day. So if you're his attorney and you want to fight for him, then you should be communicating. You don't communicate with me at all. You don't answer my questions properly. You don't do any of that stuff. But at the same time, like I told them, and I've told everybody else, this kid right here has a high calling on his life, and we serve a mighty God, and he's going to see him home. Everybody that comes across the path, unless you're just a douchebag, everybody likes Matthew. Everybody loves Matthew. Everybody says the same exact thing about Matthew. Matthew is funny, sweet, caring, the life of the party, just always trying to make somebody laugh. He don't like to see nobody hurt. He's been this way. He is one of the kids that I didn't have to spank him growing up. I didn't have to. I could just look at him a certain way and he did what I asked him to do. This here is political. Darius Patello has threatened, basically trying to bully my child into signing a plea. Even on his own attorney told me out of their own mouth that the DA said he don't know what part Matthew played in this, but he feels like Matthew played some type of part in there. So I don't know. It's crazy. I just don't understand it. I don't understand how you keep doing this. Plus, on top of that, this is something new too that I found out just a couple months ago when I was going back over my stuff talking with Kaylin, is that the day that he got arrested was the 27th, and the actual arrest warrant was not notated until like 3 or 4 days later. So technically, from the 27th to November the 1st, he was
illegally detained.
Yeah.
False imprisonment. And I saw Caitlin, if you don't mind coming off mute. Why am I calling you Caitlin? Caitlin, if you can come off mute, please. In your story, you were also talking about how he was never Mirandized, and that's in the footage. And I just want everyone to know that this entire court case is available on YouTube. And if you want to see the footage, I can email it to you. But it's all on YouTube. So how did it come to be that you were to discover that he was never Mirandized? What was the evidence other than him saying, I wasn't Mirandized, Kaylin?
So the one thing that I did really appreciate from his public defense is that they really laid out everything in terms of how his rights were violated because he wasn't Mirandized. And it all began all began the morning that he was detained initially. So first, from the body cam footage, which is basically showing what happened that morning when they arrived at Angie's house, you can tell that he was being targeted. You can just tell the detectives, they walked straight up to him to enter into a conversation with him, asking him questions. How are you friends with Koski? What do you know about what happened last night? And you didn't see that treatment getting done to anybody else who was also essentially there. Then when he got taken down to the station, he was under the impression that he was just going to go talk, tell what he knew, and, you know, comply and then go home. He even, on record, the detective told Miss Angie that, you know, we're just going to go down, get a couple notes from him about what's going on to try to piece this case together, and then we're going to give him a ride home. So everyone was under the impression that for right now, he was innocent. Then when it came to going to the police station, getting locked into the room while not being identified formally as a suspect, while not being Mirandized, while not being told formally, you can leave if you want to. You don't have to speak to me if you don't want to. You can ask your mom to be here. You can request a lawyer or an attorney. He wasn't given any of those pieces of information. And
wait, slow down real quick.
Yeah.
How old was he again?
He was 19. 19.
So that was the technicality why Angie wasn't there, right?
Yes.
How far from his birthday was it that he was 19?
He just turned 19.
Okay. I just was asking that question. Kaylin.
Yeah, but you know, like he was still young.
I'm trying to think. I want to say Matthew keeps saying he was 19. But I swear I think he was 18.
So I talked to Matthew today, and you know, it's been 6 years. And so what that looks like is when you're incarcerated, you lose track of time. My own personal experience. So I gave him a couple of tips, like when he's in the cell, to ask for some paper and pencil. And when they let him out for that hour, which they say they're letting you out for an hour, but it's really like one commercial break. So it's like 10 minutes. And so I told him to document what he sees on television. So if he's watching an episode of whatever, he was saying, like, they watch Love and Hip Hop a lot in there, to write down what happened during that episode so that he can track time. Because when you're on lockdown, you're not going outside. So and the windows in there, although the cells do have windows, I mean, people think that the cells, unless you've been incarcerated, you think it's like these cages, when really they're like sliding doors with a small little window and a flap. So with the flap, when I was incarcerated, I'd sometimes look, you know, I'm bugged. They wouldn't let me out. So I'd look through the flap at the television, and that's how I would track time. Sometimes the news would come on and you could actually see the date to be able to tell how long you've been incarcerated, especially when they're not transporting you to court as they say that they should. So little things like that. So, yeah, if it's been 6 years and we're sure he was 19.
I believe so. I think Angie was trying to count back, but I think per my original report, he was 19. But it would also make sense if it was confused because his birthday was very close to the incident. So,
yeah. And when I saw him today, and I'm glad that Angie dropped out for a moment just to say that there was definitely trauma. Like his eyes, like I said, they were his pupils were dilated, they were moving. And I was concerned about him going to court. And I joked with him. I said, "Oh my gosh, you look like Wolfman Jack. Your hair looks like mine." He was like, "I like your hair." I said, "Yeah, but you got a whole afro and you got sideburns." Like, and he was like, "Yeah, they sometimes give me a razor at court." And he said that sometimes before COVID, they would allow barbers to come in to cut their hair, but now they won't. But some of the guards are like, "We have shears, we have clippers, we can cut their hair. And to some people, this sounds real insignificant. But if he were a white boy, all that's going to happen is his hair is going to lay down, it's going to grow out. But we know that they discriminate against us because of our hair. So him having this big old fluffy afro and these long sideburns like he Elvis or somebody, you know, he looked like he Elvis mixed with some Shantae going on. He just had this big old afro. And so I was like, Matthew, when you go to court, advocate for them to get you a haircut. Because if his hair continues to grow like that and he looks that like, I mean, he looked
I've argued with them before we go to argued with them before we go to court about him getting a haircut and getting a shaving, because I told him, I said, if he's supposed, I don't care when he's supposed to appear in court and who all's in that courtroom. No, we ain't went to trial, but he's still sitting there in front of other people. I don't want him to look a hot mess.
It's not it's not even so much of the hot mess. It's like he looks traumatized. His eyes, his pupils are dilated. He got this big old afro. He looks like he's the one with the mental health concern, because he looks like, and he's not in well, I don't know. I'm not a therapist, so I can't diagnose. I'm a CPS and I'm an advocate. And I'll say that there's trauma. You know, I'm trauma informed, certified as well. But there's definitely trauma. This young kid just watched his friends get murdered. Have they done any mental health assessments on him?
No, and correction on that. I know that I just have to, everything that I have to correct everything, because I don't want nobody to get misconstrued. But Matthew didn't even know these people that got killed, except for one person, and which was his friend. And they played on the baseball team together when they was younger. And they were friends up until this happened. I mean, they would still be friends to this day. One of the victims, they was friends, but everybody else, he didn't know them.
And okay, and in all fairness, especially since this is a touchy situation, since the trial is still going on, so for me to say that, I'm going to clear this up. So if someone were in a car accident, I'll use an example. One of my friends in college, she was in like 4 or 5 car accidents in about 2 or 3 years. So now we're fast forward 20 years out of college, and she's still afraid to get on the highway. There's trauma. So if somebody walks in this case where we, you know, according to the what was that? The Henry County Herald, which was the only news coverage in the very beginning, and it was a little skewed. It painted the picture that it was Matthew in a way. That was my interpretation of it. So according to this Henry County Herald, and I'll post this information on my Facebook, or I'll share it with anyone who wants to read it. They actually called it the quadruple murder, the bonfire murders, and then they've said the triple murders, like depending on which source you went to. But what I'll say is, somewhere in there, some children were murdered, and Matthew's life was threatened. So that's one thing that we can all agree on without going too much into the case and the sensitive topics, you know, because I wasn't there, and I refuse to say something and it be misconstrued like it came out of your mouth or Matthew's mouth, because I've been in conversation with him. So what I will say is, what we can agree on is there were children, youth, teenagers who were killed, who were deceased, and Matthew was somewhere around, and he's sitting in jail facing the death penalty, although he definitely didn't pull a trigger. So just that whole ordeal could be seen as traumatic. And for him to be sitting as an advocate, as a mental health advocate, I have a problem with the fact that this young man's been sitting in jail for 6 years without any kind of mental health evaluations around PTSD, around, depression or suicidal ideations. Like he, and I'm not going to say he's suicidal because he has a very, 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 very strong spirit. That is the one thing that I got from him, is that his spirit is strong and he's holding on and he's hanging in there. And so I just have a problem with the fact that this young man is being criminalized and he hasn't been found guilty. I have a problem with the fact that this young man has to take showers with black mold and he is being denied human rights, basic human rights. I have a problem with the fact that this young man was never Mirandized and that he was locked in a room for 9 hours, which also means that he was denied access to a toilet. He was denied access to food. He was denied access to water. I have a problem with how many human right violations have been committed in this case, and that there is no one supporting this young man and Angie in this case. So you can think that he did it or not. That's neither here nor there when it comes to basic human rights being denied. So in me saying as unbiased as I can, his human rights have been denied. And that has nothing to do with the case. Just like his skin color shouldn't have anything to do with the case. Just like Angie with her Black History Month 365 t-shirt shouldn't have nothing to do with the case, and her white skin. I have a problem with the fact that we know that it does. And the fact that this young man is being targeted, and that's me not being unbiased. I'm being biased now because we know that this young man should not be incarcerated. At the end of the day, 6 years in jail. And then we're going to go into my sound bites of me registering myself this year as a lobbyist, because I don't understand how you can be incarcerated for 6 years and the government make $45,000 to $60,000 off your back each year and you get out of jail. I said, well, Matthew, they got iPhone 13s now. He said, yeah, I saw it on TV. I said, because he's missed out on 6 years of his life. 6 years. Like, me and my son listen to some of the same ratchet music. And sometimes it's a song that comes on. I'm like, oh, and he's like, Mom, that song is old. I'm like, really? When did it come out? Oh, I was incarcerated then. Like, you miss out on that time. And if they're not compensating, you can sue them all you want, and you're not going to get compensated because of Georgia's laws and the way that they're written, where you don't get compensated. So hopefully Matthew can get out, and this can be that case for people who are wrongfully incarcerated to be compensated, because that young man is going to need therapy, and he's going to need something to address the trauma that he was exposed to then, and the trauma of solitary confinement, and the trauma of having a shower with those hot showers. I don't know if it's like the women's detention center, if they give you a shower where there's no cold water, it's only hot water, and it's mold everywhere. So my prayers are with you, Angie. And, there's always a ram in the bush. And Kaylin, I commend you for using your voice, using your gifts to handwrite and bring it to life, and taking that trip from Jersey to Georgia just to be able to offer up unbiased reporting. And Demita, I wish you were here, because Demita is thebomb.com. I don't think she realizes just how phenomenal she is. And it takes something to be that resilient and determined for truth and for justice. And so I really respect Demita Bishop with FAIR, fighting against institutionalized railroading. So Demita actually chimed in. Well, if he had a good attorney, let's put this up. They most definitely would have his mental health evaluated and use it in his defense.
I can actually add to that. There's a number of things that we've talked to Matthew about to prepare him for the process. And those things were, you know, demanding that his attorneys do what he wants them to do. And part of that would be getting a mental health evaluation. Other things were also using the JPay messages as evidence, or seeing if they could subpoena Jacob as a witness, because he seems more than willing 6 years later to, you know, sing the same song that he believes that Matthew's innocent because he didn't do anything and he takes full responsibility for what happened that night. And we've just been trying to get him to write letters to his defense. And, you know, in the case that, God forbid, he does have to go all the way to the appeals process, at least he'll have a cushion to say, you know, like, I wrote to my attorneys, I asked them to do X, Y, and Z, and they didn't do it. They ignored me. And per Angie, she said that the last time she talked to Matthew, they didn't mention anything that he requested in his last letter that he sent to him, which was, you know, can you look at all of these things that I feel like are going wrong? Can you, you know, bring certain people up to testify on my behalf in the trial? Can you look at this as pieces of evidence? They haven't budged on anything yet.
No, when I've emailed them those same questions that Kaylin just stated. You know, are you going to use the JPay messages? Are you going to call anybody on Matthew's behalf? Are you going to, you know, bring whatever that we can think of at that moment of when we're in the court? I'll send them an email and ask them about it. My response that I'm getting back from them is, well, some of these questions that you're asking can't be discussed over email. Why not? That email is between me and you. Well, reason why they don't want is because several months ago I asked them about a particular bill that that is a bill of particulars, and because I screenshotted their answer and showed it to Demita, and Demita put them on blast. They don't want to email me any information that is important that I need to know, because they think that I'm going to screenshot it and put it on social media or whatever. But at the same time, though, if you deliberately lie to me because you know I don't know the laws, but what they don't know is I'm going to go and Google it. I'm the one that figured out everything about this freaking case before they did, and even laid out everything, because everything was just layable out. It's all there. I did research on this. Okay. And every attorney I went to, I told them the same story, which is the same story that we're telling right now. Same story I told Demita, same story I told Kaylin when she came on. And they're here and they're seeing the same thing that I seen, and the same story I've been saying. And so if I've been doing all of this, you as his attorney should know that, one, he is innocent. Two, there isn't anything that you can't tell me. As long as you're doing your job right, I'm not fixing to go blast what you're about to do on the next thing, because of course I want my child home. So how retarded does that sound for me to put what you're going to do in court on social media for everybody to see? But if you're in here and you're not doing what you're supposed to be doing, and you're not supporting him the way that you should be doing, and you're not trying to help him, and you know some of his rights have been violated, then yes, I'm gonna put you on blast. They cannot stand Demita. I don't care. Don't like her if you don't want to. I don't care. Demita and Kaylin have been the most two that have, since they've been on, have helped Matthew the most out of his attorneys. They have educated me on and breaking down things for me and helping me understand more stuff than his attorneys ever have.
Anything else, Angie?
No, I was
Okay.
just reading the comment, but yeah.
Okay. I have to pull up my email to read this. Hold on. Y'all, I'm getting good with this StreamYard. I don't know where my engineer is tonight, but y'all know I like technology, so we just floating around. Okay, let's see. Let me exit. And Hold on. I'm going to read this JPay that I did not include. June 22nd, 2021, 10:31 a.m. This is from Jacob Koski. Thank you for helping Matthew Baker. When I say he's innocent, that is an understatement. He's really a victim in my case. I could tell he and everyone else was scared for their life that night. He had no knowledge of what I was going to do on October 27th, 2016. I called him for a ride and he tricked him into coming down the street to the house. He did not give me the guns. I took them from on top of the fridge. They belonged to Destiny. One of the victims' grandfather, Ray Ollinger, he never even held the guns. But I thought by me pleading guilty but mentally ill February 8th, 2019, that one of the stipulations was he would get out of jail. County jail is BS, and they drag you and humiliate you, especially Henry County. They are beyond corrupt. I sent you the thing in the mail, public defender's mail, not directed to them before my preliminary hearing. I can go on and on about the corruptness. The material in this discovery packet is all speculations, and Baker knows he's innocent. That's why I respect him, and I'm willing to back him up. It takes a lot of bravery to be in his shoes, because if you know Henry County, you know they are evil, racist, and corrupt. And it's a slim chance of getting out if you're innocent. And even if you go to trial, I was there 2 years. I've seen it multiple times. I'm willing to testify on his behalf, and there is no way one juror would say he's guilty if they have some type of good in them. And that's facts. Did you ever get my mail? I thank you again for helping. God knows best, and thank you, thank you, thank you. If you have any questions, just ask. Tell Matt to hold it down and keep praying. God is listening. Jacob Koski. We're going to take a breath. What's there for y'all? Anything? I mean, y'all have been through all of these trials, so I'm only saying stuff that you've already heard. Is there anything that you hear different now?
I feel no, don't hear anything different. It's the same thing. I just wish Henry County would actually, for once, do their job correctly, and his attorneys would do their job correctly, and they would actually get Jacob the help that he needs and let Matthew free. That kid, I don't know that kid, but I watched his trial because they told me not to go or whatever, but I watched it on TV. They brought out a bunch of boxes of him from all his childhood life from the age of 3, and they heard his attorney tell about his mental status and things like that he's gone through growing up and stuff like that. And the system failed him. The system failed this boy. Now I'm not taking up for him. I'm not even angry with Jacob, and I should be angry with him, just like the victim's family should be angry at him, because my son is sitting there for something that he didn't do because of what Jacob did. But at the same sense, when you're schizophrenic, you don't understand what you're going through, and you don't even have control of yourself. I personally do not feel like, out of these messages, does Jacob need to be in prison for the rest of his life. I think he needs to be in a mental facility that will help him, that will put him on medicine, and so he can actually see what it feels like to be a normal human being, instead of a monster one day and a child another day and somebody else another day, and just all over the place, because you have multiple personalities, ADHD, whatever other issues that he has. That alone is just him being a ticking time bomb. It ultimately all boils down to the system at this point has failed him. When they released him from the mental hospital, which is the lawyer said that 2 weeks, it was 2 weeks prior to this happening, they released him with no medication. He told them that he was stable to be out.
That's another Georgia law. The medication belongs to the jails or the institutions. So once they stabilize you, it doesn't matter how serious your mental health is. The medication is the property of the jails or the institution. They may give you a prescription, but it doesn't mean that you have insurance to pick up the prescription. They sometimes will give you enough, like if you leave an institution and you go to jail, they may give you enough to cover you while you're in jail. But usually the medication is property of the jail.
To R.G. Bryant. Okay, I agree with him with the comment. He says this really should be assigned to the GBI immediately. So I was wondering why the GBI didn't come out anyways. Not to be funny, but this is 4 white kids, and per what they said, it's the most horrible, gruesome scene of something they've ever seen. They didn't call the FBI, GBI, DEA, whoever, whatever. They didn't call none of them people out there. They decided to do their own investigation on this. Just last year, in January, my cousin was shot and killed. Do you know the GBI was on his case? And it was one person, and they knew who did it. 6 months, 7 months, 8 months, something like that, after Matthew first got arrested, there was a murder that happened. Actually, within a year of him being arrested, there was a murder 2 murders happened in Henry County. Both the GBI came out to investigate both of them, but they didn't come out to investigate this one here. When I remember first going to try to get a police report, after he'd been in there for probably like maybe a couple weeks or maybe 2 weeks, something like that, so I could get it taken to when I was looking for an attorney, they told me they couldn't release the police report because it was still an ongoing case. So even to now, it's still an ongoing case. My confusion is, how is it still an ongoing case if you've already charged him with murder? Now you're adding more charges to him because he won't sign a plea. But we're going to motion hearings and all this other stuff, and you can't release any information because it's still an ongoing case. Obviously, you don't have all your facts together, or you don't have everything together. It's just an ongoing case. That's the best thing that you can come up with because you don't have any information on him, so you want to just keep it rolling.
I didn't realize I was still on mute. I said, wow. I almost cried when I spoke with Matthew. I gave him some coping skills. I did give him some coping skills. I gave him some coping skills of how he can get through the next couple of months on lockdown, and being able to keep his mind. We ain't gonna sign the plea deal, but yeah. Ladies, thank you for joining us tonight. And how do we get in touch to support you? What does support look like?
We You mean, what do you mean, financially or emotionally?
What does support look like? Tell, to let the people know. What does support look like?
As financially, it's it's family, basically. Real close family. It's only a few of us that put money on Matthew's book. If anybody would like to do that and they live in Henry County, you can go straight there and put money on his book. The kiosk machine only costs $1. They
What's your
charge him for
cash app?
every.
Hold on. What's your cash app, Angie?
My cash app is money sign Team Matthew.
Money sign Team Matthew.
Uh-huh.
I can type. Is that
Yes.
right? Okay.
Yes.
I can spell team.
Yes.
Okay. All right. Thank you, ladies. We're gonna
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hang on. We got the after show. All right. And next week we're going to have, where'd he go? Kevin. Where'd he go? Let me find Kevin. There he is. Next week we're going to have the case of Kevin Upkins. And who he is someone who is a lifer. He is serving life and without parole for an armed robbery. And there was no weapon. So let's see if I can. I can't add him. Let me see. Hold on. You turn on your camera. We're about to see if he can. He's calling in from prison. So I don't know what that looks like. Can you call my phone and use speakerphone? I don't have my phone next to me. Hold on. Then he just said, don't announce that. Ooh, I don't know all the rules. That may be why he's off camera. Ding, 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 ding. So what we'll say is there is a case of Kevin Upkins who has been sitting in prison. And I believe he's innocent. He's been there for 13 years so far. And he is in prison for armed robbery. Armed meaning possession of a weapon. And there was no weapon. They didn't even come to the crime, from what I'm going to gather, happened in Milledgeville, Georgia, which is away from Atlanta, Georgia. He's from the Bankhead area. And 7 months after the crime was committed is when they arrested him for this crime. And so next week we'll be talking to Kevin Upkins a little more about this injustice. So right now we're down to the last 5 minutes. It's too bad Demita couldn't join us because you see she's so wise. Look, don't announce that. I need people like her to remind me. Oh no, he said he's downloading the browser so he can cam up. He coming on. Nope, Bobby or Robert, the production team. Hold on. I'm hanging in there. I hang in there. Let's see. All right, let's see. Let me send the link so that he can join us. Y'all, I thought I was so ahead of technology, and now I'm back to, the learning curve. So y'all pray for me. Yeah. So this man, he how he's been sharing his story. He actually reached out to me almost a year ago, and he's been utilizing social media to actually get his voice heard. He actually created some music, and he had a couple of labels looking at his music and sharing on their Instagrams and things. So he may find somebody who has 30,000 followers, say, hey, listen to my music. But his whole, all of his bars are about being wrongfully incarcerated and what it's like. And so that's what he's been doing. And he's been fighting and advocating for himself behind prison walls for a lawyer. He's done GoFundMes, and he has a Cash App. He has all of this stuff going on just to try to save up money for an attorney, because he did have, before being sentenced to the 13-year or the life, he had multiple attorneys. So he was able to go back to school while incarcerated to get his paralegal degree. And he's been advocating for himself. And I was just so impressed because it takes a lot to really stand for yourself, especially when there's no one who believes you. And it's just him. What does it mean saying? His case is the best example of being found guilty based on the language of the law. Mic drop. So, yeah. So it's like, Kevin. See, Demeter, you're supposed to be on the show. I don't know if you remember when I told you some people are guilty not because of the crime as we know it, but because of the way the law is written in the state of Georgia. Okay, Kevin's back. Turn on your camera, Kevin, if you can. All right. Well, we're down to 1 minute. We'll have all of these technical difficulties worked out between now and next week. Thank you for joining us. And Kevin, if you can, just hang out in the room, and we'll get you situated so that you're ready to go next week with us. Y'all, this is what happens when you have a live show. You never know what's going to happen, who's going to drop in, who's going to drop out. But all we can do is keep sharing, keep having these conversations. This platform has about 40,000 viewers a month. Let's get those numbers up and support our Black media. Peace out.